Just happy to hear that tune again. It's been a while, 2 months away from the Indian Cricket Podcast. Bit of an identity crisis, honestly, for me. But I had the time of my life in the IPL. That's for another episode on the podcast. However, importantly, we are back. I'm very, very happy that one of India's most regular cricket podcasts is up and running yet again. A lot of you have asked us about when are we going to take our next episode live? What's the plan going forward? It's a big year in cricket. And we're putting all of that together for you, of course, as we speak and get along. But the good news is we're up and running, we're live. And you know what? I couldn't ask for a better guest than Dhruv Mullick to join me on the show. You know, we were obviously pondering over how do we sort of get back into thick of things? How do we start, sort of restart the podcast? Where do we begin? There are obviously a number of touch points that we both feel very strongly about. However, I think the immediate one for both of us was without a shadow of doubt the test team and the test cycle that's completed,
Correct.
and of course, where is the test unit headed going forward?
Yeah.
There've been a lot of reports. We've heard from the best of the best. Every
Yeah.
former cricketer has spoken about this.
Yeah.
So we're not going to go into what should the team do or not, but we'll
Yeah.
just take a macro look at what's happened in the previous cycle
Yeah.
and just do a bit of a status check as to where this test team is headed. Just to ensure that we refresh our memories and refresh everyone's memories of the 21-23 cycle. We obviously began in England, which was obviously such a massive series. India in England, and it was incredibly well contested. We won 2 games, drew 1 game, and lost 1 game, and we were looking good to win that series if that series had gone through, but it didn't. Obviously,
Yeah.
the last game, because of COVID and whatnot. And then we had New Zealand at home where we drew 1, lost 1. Remember, a 10-wicket haul in that game at the Wankhede for New Zealand's left-arm spinner. Needs no introduction. Then we went on to South Africa, where we lost 2 games, which
We
were
lost 2-1,
heavy
correct? Yeah.
defeats. 2-1 there. And then Sri Lanka comes home, we win 2 games. England comes home, or rather, we played the fifth test versus England. Then after
Correct.
that, of
Correct.
that
Yeah.
series, and we
Yeah.
lost quite badly. Jasprit Bumrah captained that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then India versus Bangladesh, we won both tests. India versus
Yeah.
Australia, we all know what happened in that series. We were looking good until the last couple of games. In fact, I think Australia drew in Ahmedabad in the last game, and then of
Yeah.
course we lost the final versus Australia in England lately.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that was our cycle. Interestingly, we've lost 4+1 games, one being the neutral game and 2 at
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
So and we were level on losses with Australia heading into the WTC final, which just shows
Yeah.
how close through these two teams have been in this cycle.
No, correct. And I think what was quite evident from this recent cycle that you ran through is that it's a conversation that a lot of us have, that we always end up playing one test series at home, one marquee series. So in the 1921 cycle, we played 4 test matches at home against England. In
Yeah.
this cycle, we had again a 4 test match series against Australia at home. So we do get to use the advantage of our home conditions, and we also get to travel away for a big marquee series against Australia or England. So having
Yeah.
said that, we do always get an opportunity to pick up maximum points whenever we can.
Mm-hmm.
However, as
Mm-hmm.
I said when we opened up the segment, that had this been a regular test cycle, it's just about playing well, and if you're the number one team at the end of the cycle, you win the ultimate prize. But now things have taken an added dimension with this one-off final. So, as you said, we might have been level on losses with Australia going into the final, but how you perform in the big final matters in the end, doesn't it?
There have been calls for players being withdrawn from the IPL, or franchisees being told, or
No, it doesn't
rather
work.
suggestions that BCCI needs to tell franchisees, listen,
Yeah.
we need X and Y players out of it. But just to put this in perspective, Rohit Sharma, let us just take a look at the players that were present in the final for India, right? Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, Shubman Gill, all
Yeah.
three were incredibly important members of the 4 teams that finished in the playoffs. you go down and there are further players. There's Ravindra Jadeja. KS Bharat was part of GT. You never knew if Ridhiman Saha got injured, he would have had a game in. Um, there were so many other players who were part of the squad that were integral members of different franchisees. Now, I think just to go beyond that, the call that a lot of people are making to withdraw players from franchisees,
Yeah.
it's quite absurd because it's like asking the most important person of a joint venture in any business to step out of the joint venture while the project's happening.
Yeah.
It's quite literally the players are the most important part of this joint venture, which is the IPL. They're the most important stakeholders. The players are the most
Correct.
important stakeholders of the IPL. Without these guys,
Yeah.
will a semi-final, a knockout, or a final have the same value? Without a Virat Kohli, without a Shubman Gill, without all of these guys, it just won't. And at the end of the
No, it's
day,
not.
the IPL is an integral part of the Indian cricket
Yeah.
economy, an integral part of the BCCI, the Indian cricket setup.
I
It's
mean,
like asking your most important stakeholder to withdraw.
you
It's
remember our
ridiculous.
one of our earlier chats on emotion versus reality and practicality versus
Yeah.
reality. It's exactly that. I think that I've said this for quite a while, that there's a big lack of understanding on many experts on how the business of the cricket economy runs in India and how
Yeah.
it all comes together. And
Absolutely.
we, as in India and with Indian cricketers, we pretty much need the best players to run the cricket economy. So it's very easy to say that pull players out and manage them. That doesn't work in reality. And number two, what people don't understand, and the IPL is a business, it's private capitalist businesses that own players. And they aren't, those days are gone where, it was a trial and error and you're going to see how many players you can develop. It's a business. You pay these players very well to win. And secondly, since we're talking a lot about Test cricket, every Indian player gets paid 15 lakhs to play a Test match. And the Test pyramid in India has always been very strong. As I said, it reminds me of that podcast that Virat had with Danish earlier in the IPL, where he
Uh-huh.
said that I've always been considered a failed captain, but I won the Test match for 5 years in a row. Now, that again, if we never had this whole WTC final that we're talking about, over 19 and 21 and over 21 and 23, I think we ended up as the number one or the number two test team in the two cycles. So we may as well have won it anyway. So I think things are fine the way they are.
Yeah.
Individual player load management is a conversation that we can have we can have all night. But again, it doesn't work in reality because a lot of the players, even look at the fast bowlers, you mentioned the batsmen. Shami and Siraj have been bowling so well across all formats. They've been doing very well in
Yeah.
50 over cricket, they've been doing well in Test cricket, they were both brilliant in the IPL. So it's not realistic to say that pick X over Y or pick Y over Z. With the talent pool that we have, should we be having three or four backup players in every position in every format? We should, but at the same time, it's really very clear that the selectors and the management like having these multi-format players who are versatile, who can play across formats. What my bigger, I would say, pattern that I've observed is, are you going to have players like with the opening batsman? We seem to be very clear that we want multiple condition openers. We need to now start applying that to our middle order as well. We probably need to start applying that so like we note how Jadeja is a batting all rounder almost when we play abroad, because he plays almost as a specialist batsman. What is going to be our thinking for the next cycle going forward? Are we going to groom different middle order players at different number three? And I guess when the test series squad is picked for the two tests in West Indies coming up now, we'll have a better picture on how it's to go.
You know what gives us a good picture, Dhruv, about where things are going forward? It's the contracts. The annual contracts from the BCCI, which are now retainers. They're now
Yeah.
being called retainers, and
Yeah.
you know what? There's so much that we can talk about here. So let's get going and understand. where all of this is unfolding at this point of time. Now, on the screen for people that are listening in, we've got the annual contracts from the previous cycle.
Yeah.
And we are also going to compare that to the contracts that are out for the current cycle, and
Correct.
we'll go from there. So, Dhruv, all you.
Yeah, so I think what's the big understanding now, because I know a lot of people had a couple of questions for you on how the period works. So it runs October to September. So since I started, getting very involved in this, if I look at say 2019 and 2020, the contract period would run from October 2019 to end of September 2020, and then it happens every subsequent year. So then the next for 20 and 21 and 21, 22 that you've put up on the screen now. But the interesting thing, the contracts are always announced, Sumedh, as you're aware, in around January. So it almost seems like it's a backdated performance review that we'll see how well you play between October to December of the previous year. And then you get given the contract or the retainership in January and February, which will go all the way till September. So what we're trying to compare now between the last contract period to now is that how this fits very well into the test planning. And what's very easy for us to see if we compare this to what we have right now. You've just changed the screen right now. So that we can tell is, so what's the big difference we've seen is that we've had one player move from grade A to grade A plus, correct? And the reasoning for that is because he's a permanent member in your test team, playing all your formats. So I think what's very evident to me is that this year there's been an even greater emphasis on which players are being picked, why they're being picked, why they're given these contracts, and they form almost the core of at least all three formats of the squad, and that's how the kind of logic has been used.
So if you take a look at, so we're obviously looking at the contracts from the last cycle, and a few of the
Yeah.
names that we see over here that are quite significant. Of course, you see Ajinkya Rahane sitting in grade B from last cycle, and he wasn't included in this cycle at all, only to then be picked for the WTC final and did well, which is significant. You had Hardik Pandya in the grade C category, who's now been moved up. It's interesting because he's now your T20I skipper,
Yeah.
and is such an important member of the
He's
50
moved to
over.
grade A now, hasn't he?
Now he's moved to grade A, as you
Yeah.
can see now. There he is
Yeah.
on grade A. And a few of the other names that are not here.
Yeah.
Hanuma Vihar. Ishant Sharma was in grade B, and now he's completely missing and out of the picture. And
Yeah.
Ravindra Jadeja has now moved to A plus, I think. So Dhruv, here's the retainership from 2022 to 2023. However,
Yeah.
interestingly, Dhruv, why has it changed from contracts to retainership this year?
I don't know.
That's
I mean,
something that I
the
noticed.
only thing that I would look into that is that you're probably not signing a formal contract. You're just given a kind of a retainership kind of model. And yeah, the fact is you can't call something a contract if it's not a contract, right? That's the basic premise. Also, if you compare this to other countries, namely England and Australia, that also have central contracts, and they were countries that had adopted it before India, the money and the payments aren't very public, Sumit. So we read in the media that Mitchell Stark is a 2 million Australian dollar contract holder and Joe Root is £1 million there, but we don't know what the actual numbers are. With this retainership, what's very important is that we know how much, who earns 7 crore, who earns 5 crore, who earns 3 crore, and who earns 1 crore. Now, while everyone can see the 22, 23 kind of numbers that you've put up and the names, this period now would have run from the 1st of October 2022 and it will run all the way till end of September 2023. Now, in that period from October to December, we knew that a lot of players had done exceptionally well. Guys like Rishabh Pant were brilliant, I mean, until his unfortunate accident in the end of December. However, what's a little exciting, Sumedh, and I know you picked this up as well, Jasprit Bumrah hasn't played cricket for India at all during this period, and he's still been given a retainership. So apart from those 2 points, I think this list of players that they've picked is even better than what they've done in the last cycle. So if we were to run grade by grade or player by player, I think this time we have it looks very, very interesting in terms of how all these names are put together.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think I am incredibly happy for Ravindra Jadeja, who's finally getting his due. I think
Yeah,
for a long time, we made a case for him last year as well that he deserved to be in the A plus category.
yeah,
But to now see him there, being given that respect,
yeah,
to as an all format player, as somebody who's performed incredibly well for India, it's phenomenal.
yeah,
I'm also happy for Hardik, having seen him in close quarters recently,
yeah,
to see him, come up from being a non-contracted player. Remember, he was dropped when he was injured from the
yeah,
central
yeah,
contract list. I think it was in
yeah,
2020,
yeah.
and then move from C to A. It's quite nice. Same with Shubman. He's moving
Yeah.
up the ranks. Pretty good to see. So yeah, I think the
And,
only
and,
one I
and
think
another point,
yeah,
Sumit,
go
that's
ahead.
been quite interesting is this time these contracts slash retainers were only announced just before the IPL. So they were announced almost by first week of April. I think the IPL had started, and then these names came out just a day before. So
Mhm.
what would have made this very interesting is that probably the BCCI, along with Abhi Kuruvilla, the general manager, and I don't know if the team management, which is the captain and coach, have any kind of input into this. I think it's more a decision which is the BCCI with Roger Binny, Jai Shah, and Abhi Kuruvilla as the general manager. Is that
Mhm.
we'll wait to see how well these players have performed, as I said, in the October to December period before,
Yeah.
and how well, and we're going to predict how important they will be from January 2023 to end of September 2023. Correct? Now, what makes things very interesting is that if you now that I'm looking at this list, apart from Jasprit Bumrah, no complaints or questions at all about A plus. I think Jadeja being there is very, very important. And in the grade A, what is almost significant to me with these names? So there's Hardik, there's Ashwin, and just tell me the other three names.
The other three names in the A plus category, right? Just give me
Not A plus, in A, in A. So Shamir, Rishabh Pant, and Akshar Patel, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, yeah, I can see it. I think you just moved the screen out of the way for a bit so I could see it. So
Yeah.
that was my point that
Mhm.
giving Rishabh Pant a contract is interesting because by end of December, it was pretty clear that he wouldn't be available for almost the whole of 2023.
Mhm.
Um, but the rest of the players, there's no doubt at all. I mean, your best spinner, your best fast bowler, and
Yeah.
upgrading
Yep.
your Akshar Patel
Yeah.
from grade B to grade A just
Which
shows
is
that
a nice
he's
touch.
an
Yeah,
important
it's part of
player
the
in
plan.
your test team, in your T20 team, and your ODI team. So
Yep.
your criteria there is very, very clear. And what's good now, this is going to make the discussion even more interesting. So the period from October to December 2022, KL Rahul started to lose his form as a test player. He didn't play any T20 internationals, but he started doing very well at number 5 in ODI cricket. So
Yep.
maybe that logic is that we will move him down from grade A to grade B, which is why he's moved
Mm.
into B. Pujara
Mm.
has managed to retain himself in grade B, the 3 crore category, which is great. Shreyas Iyer, Siraj were all there from the last cycle. But
They were there.
Shubman Gill and Surya got a promotion to grade B.
They've been
And
moved up.
no
Yep.
dispute or debate on all of that at all.
Yep. Yeah. Um, what's interesting also for me is that Shikhar Dhawan's still around. I'm that is that
Grade
is
B.
that is quite. He is still around. He's still
Yeah.
a contracted player, which means they have him in their mind for the 50 over cycle, perhaps at some point, if there is an
I think
injury
it's more
or
because the performance was good. Because, like I said, no, Sumit, this period is backdated. This gets
yeah.
announced every January or every March as it happened this year, but it includes the October to December period of the previous year, which is something I find
2020.
now that I look
Yeah.
at it over the last 3, 4 years. I find it a bit
Yeah.
strange. Maybe I
Mm.
think, because someone asked me this the other day, I think they keep it over that period because that's the Indian domestic calendar and Indian first class calendar. We start October to end of September. So maybe that could be the reasoning, or
Yeah.
Yeah, I could be wrong
Yeah.
on that. So yeah, so that's one reason, because if you remember, Shikhar was doing so well as a ODI opener towards the middle and end of 2022, and then
Yeah.
Shubman has this meteoric rise that you literally,
Yeah.
moment Rohit was fit and came back, you couldn't do anything. And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
Shikhar himself has said this in enough interviews that if he was a selector, he would have picked Shubman above him 10 times out of 10, only because of that meteoric rise. So I think that the
Yeah.
contracts slash retainerships, I think, are shaping the way how the management thinks and the selectors and the board thinks on how we're building a squad going forward as well.
It's a marker, right? It's a great place for
Yeah.
us to refer to when we want to understand or get
Yeah.
an insight into the mind of
It's
the
a marker of
management of the
merit, Sumit.
BCCI.
That's what I always keep telling
And it's a
people,
marker
that
of merit.
your BCCI
Absolutely.
contract value, the 7 crore, 5 crore, 3 crore, 1 crore, is an actual marker of your talent, ability, your performances, your skill, everything. The IPL auction value is at times a beneficiary of a market value,
Your
of an
recent
auction
performance.
value. It's a bit like
Absolutely.
poker.
Yeah.
Sometimes the chips are going to fall in the right place, sometimes they won't.
Yeah.
It depends on how much cap space a team have. So that's what
Yeah.
makes, again, being an elite Indian cricketer so unique, because
Yeah.
these names that we were talking about before we went to the contracts, you
Yeah.
potentially earn 15 lakhs to play a test match for India. Now, this is, again, because we went over it in a lot of detail last time. This is the additional income. It's over and above the contract income. So while you have these fixed
Yeah.
retainers, every time you're in the playing 11 for India, you get 15 lakhs for a test match, 6 for an ODI, and 3 lakhs for a T20 international. So someone like Rahane, even though he didn't get contracted because he didn't play any test cricket in the last quarter of 2022, and we weren't even sure if he was going to play in 2023, assuming now he goes to the West Indies, he still will earn 45 lakhs for the 3 test matches that he's played, because he's played, although no, he won't earn anything for the test final, because we all got fined 100% of the match fee. Yeah.
That's true.
So
That's true.
everyone
And that's a
loses, so he's lost that.
conversation for another
But
day.
that's what the kind of money you make. So a lot of these
No, and that
cricketers,
rarely happens. That rarely
sorry?
happens as well. So
Yeah,
no, I'm
it
saying that
rarely
it
happens.
rarely
Yeah.
happens. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but you see where I'm coming from. That if
Yeah.
you, as a cricketer, plan your calendar, and this is something I'm sure we're going to talk about on subsequent episodes. That now, because over this entire 3-4 year period of central contracts, we now are very clear the period that the BCCI looks at, October to September. We know the month when they're likely to announce the contract, and we know that the main crux of the Indian players are picked in playing 11s for India basis where they end up on the retainership list. So I think that
Wow.
helps us in a very big way. And it is, again, a very, very good, transparent, merit based system. So, like I said, I mean, my favorite point about how it's very easy to determine what a Indian cricketer earns in their on field salary at their central
Yeah.
contracts with the number of games that they're picked in the playing 11, and they get the match fee. So it's a very interesting system how they've got it. We go back to the grade
Cool.
C list, because I think we haven't covered that yet.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah,
Sure. Let's go back to grade C in just a moment. There we are. Oh, sorry. Yep.
no problem.
Here we are.
Yeah. So again,
So yeah.
what I noticed over here, there's been one, I don't want to use the word demotion, but Shardul moved from grade B to grade C. And I think
Hmm.
the rationale there is because he's a
That's
permanent member in only one format. If you remember
that's
there,
it.
he
Yeah.
was in grade
Right.
B in the
Yep.
last cycle,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So he's
Yep.
moved there. Ishan Kishan is now been given a contract because he got a double hundred in an ODI as well towards the end of 2022. So he's now
Yep.
almost seen as a two format player and could be a backup for a test team. Deepak Hooda, who did well in 2020 cricket last year, comes in. Kuldeep, Washington, Sanju, Arshdeep, and Bharat also come in because they've now been backups in their respective format. So I think that what's very interesting, Sumedh, if you look at the 22-23 that you've picked, right? So let's go test cricket.
Yeah.
Which will be very easy for someone, right? You look at this
Yeah.
test team, you've got Rohit as you and Rahul as your openers. One's an A
Mm-hmm.
plus and one's a B player. Your backup
Mm-hmm.
opener Shubman is a grade B. Your main players, fast bowlers on the team sheet, your two best spinners, Ashwin and Aksar, are grade A. Your grade A plus is Jadeja. So you can almost pick your best team looking at this. Now, if you look ODI cricket, which is important in a World Cup year, your entire top 4 5 players in your one day team, Rohit, Shubman, Virat, Shreyas Iyer, and then KL Rahul at 5, you have them all between grade A plus to grade A to grade B. And in T20 internationals, where I'm not saying the focus is not important this year, but it's not a very important focus because the next T20 World Cup is 2024. So you might see a lot of players in that T20 international squad who are probably not contracted at all. However, if you look in this cycle with your main test and ODI players, you can see them all here.
That's true, and like we said, it's a marker. It's an absolute marker
Yeah,
for to and a great place to understand where the
yeah,
team is moving and what is it shaping into. But
yeah,
a really important point that you mentioned is that we might just end up seeing a lot of players that aren't contracted
yeah,
in the
yeah.
T20 setup
Because
going
we're
forward
planning
as
for
well.
2024.
Precisely, and it's
Yeah.
going to begin with 5 meaningless T20s that we're going to play in West Indies. But yeah, anyway,
Yeah, so Test cricket is always going to be important because of the WTC points, right? So
yeah,
every test series that you play is important as we go to the next
yeah,
cycle. One day cricket is
yeah,
obviously important because it's a World Cup year, and
yeah,
it's going to be interesting how this pans out. So this, Sumedh, is the point that I made when we started chatting, that in every cycle, the benefit of being India in this cricket economy is that we will always end up playing maximum test matches against England or Australia, and we will
yeah,
always have five test matches, a five test match, four test match series against either England or Australia at home.
yeah.
So we do have enough opportunities to play in our conditions to get us the points. And the other important thing is that it'll help us plan about those gaps that we wanted to plug, that we talked about. What are we going to do with the middle order now and things like that?
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting, like you said, obviously, 5 tests versus England at home in the next cycle. We've got 5 tests versus Australia away, down under, Border Gavaskar Trophy away again. And we're also headed to South Africa.
Yeah.
So we have an opportunity to, sort of try and undo, not undo, but try and better ourselves in South African conditions.
Yeah.
But the big ones obviously will be the England and Australia series that we're going to be
Of
playing in
course,
the
and
next
again,
cycle.
see, the contracts that they've announced are a very big indicator of this. That's the whole point, that I was said that
Yeah,
it looks to me that it's very clear that whoever has been given a contract or has been named in this BCCI retainership list, you look at a Shubman, a
yeah,
Rahul, or Rohit, they're going to always be your main red ball test openers. Your backups don't
yeah,
necessarily have to be contracted. So someone like a Gaikwad or a Jaiswal will come in as and when needed. An experienced player like Rahane could be called back to play. Now, if Rahane goes to the West Indies right now, he'll be someone who's picked, who's not contracted. What's going to be very interesting in the test cycle is how many players we pick who've not been contracted. So, will a Sarfraz come in? Are we going to try someone like an Arshdeep Singh? The reason that probably, and Rahul Dravid has a big role in players playing county cricket as well. I know this for a fact because of a couple of the players that I've spoken to. So, is he trying to groom Arshdeep as a red ball seamer now as well? And yeah, these names that you've mentioned here are almost names that when these squads are announced for the West Indies tour, we'll get a very clear indication of which core players are picked from the contract retainership summit. So look at that as your marker, and which players are picked outside the retainership marker.
100%. And these names will always be around. Rahane, Mayank, Hanuma Vihari, Jaydev, Kuldeep Yadav is, I think, another name
Jaydev,
that
Kuldeep got
he
a
wants to
contract.
play Red Bull.
Kuldeep was contracted.
But he'll be around. No. Obviously, these are players that don't have contracts as well.
Okay,
But
right,
just
right, right.
generally,
Yeah.
these are names that'll always be around.
These are names that will
In
always
a
be
way.
around. And see, what's the great advantage is that, and when we later do our domestic cricket conversation, we'll know that the benefit of being an Indian professional cricketer is just immense, because you get so much opportunity. So you have an entire red ball
Yeah.
competition coming up in the Duleep Trophy. You will have an Irani Trophy. You're going to have a whole Ranji Trophy season, and you'll have a couple of India A red ball games as well. So there's always a strong bench that will always be available. What's going to be interesting, Sumedh, is how the bench is utilized. And the reason why I brought that up is because if you looked at just say the openers, to give you an example, uh, what is the signal that will go to openers like an Ishwaran, like somebody like a Mayank, somebody like a Rohan Kanumal or a Panchal who didn't play the IPL, right? But how
Yeah.
much of how is someone in touch with them regarding the importance of red ball runs and where they stand in the pecking order with the tier one who have the contract, your Rohit, Rahul, Shubman, your tier two after that, which is your Yashasvis and your Gaikwads, and the guys below who are pushing that. So why I love this whole contract list every year is it gives me the indication on who the main players are and how the subsidiary players, just to use the word subsidiary a little in a lighter sense, who are the subsidiary players that are
Yeah.
going to come in from the same thing.
And I think a lot of times when there are these pillar moments in Indian cricket, like the loss of the WTC final,
Yeah,
a lot of things go again back to the drawing board. While the contracts are a great marker, I
yeah,
think the BCCI will sit down and Rahul Dravid will certainly sit down along with Rohit Sharma and review and rethink. And we definitely can see a lot of the names that that haven't figured
yeah,
lately being included in the setup. What's interesting, Dhruv, is that in the cycle after
yeah.
after the West Indies tests, we don't play a test match until I think
Till December
probably till
2023, we
December.
go to South Africa again
Exactly.
because it's the
So there's
ODI
a big gap.
preparation, right, for the World Cup. ODI
Exactly,
World Cup
exactly.
is
So there's a big gap between the West Indies tests and the test matches in December versus South Africa. And to be honest, it does not make a lot of sense to chop and
yeah.
change and make a lot of changes now heading into the West Indies tests.
No, it
Might
doesn't.
as well carry on the same.
And here's the interesting
They
curveball
should.
that in this time
Yeah.
period between Shubman, Rohit, Rahul, they're very important players in the 50 over setup as well for the World Cup, and they are
Yeah.
three very important players in Test cricket as well. And your two backups, which are Jaiswal and Rituraj Gaikwad, are all format players as well. So even if we're planning for say Test cricket post the World Cup, it to me
Yeah.
now is very significant that the management like all format players. So I think the whole conversation we had on specialists per format seems I won't say it's redundant, but it
Mhm.
isn't how the
Yeah.
selectors and the management are thinking.
It's interesting though, Dhruv. I think you know, at some point or the other, we'll have. I mean, this particular point rounds up our episode where we started, which is the coexistence of various formats, the
Yeah,
IPL, the WTC, everything. This is all going to coexist. Before you could potentially see the WTC final being shifted before the IPL, but in the next few cycles that's highly
yeah,
unlikely because of how the future tours programs get set up,
yeah.
and therefore this is a reality that we have to exist with.
But is it
India.
fixed in England for the next WTC final as well?
It is
But what
fixed in
happens if
England.
England qualify for the final then? Do they get home advantage or
I think they get home advantage.
because the previous two finals have both been neutral teams playing in England, right?
Yeah,
Now,
exactly,
but the
exactly,
logic again
exactly.
is that you need a country that where it's possible to play in June, right? It rules out a lot of India and the Gulf because of the weather. So England unfortunately becomes that default northern hemisphere country where you can play.
Yep.
It isn't season in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. So it's not like there's so many
Yeah.
options to play.
No, and also time zones, right? I think you have to cater
Yeah.
to audiences all around the world. England is geographically placed in a place which allows fans
The
from all
Indian
over the
time
world
zone
to,
to work well also. Yeah.
and therefore it sort of works out well. However, there have been calls to to have the final at a
Yeah.
different venue in a different country, not the next
Yeah.
cycle, I guess, but
Yeah,
maybe
but
going
I
forward.
think you summed it up quite well. That look, practicality versus practicality and reality of the business of Indian cricket, how our ecosystem works, and how our players work. We play multiple formats. We have a very packed calendar. So
Yeah.
repeatedly going back, I mean, like I said, if we had won this WTC final, we might not have had any content to even talk about on the show because there'd be nothing to blame, right? Or no excuses to
Yeah.
make. So the
Yeah.
trouble is that, when there are excuses, there's a lot to talk about. But I think that there aren't really any excuses because it's just the reality of our system. We have this important IPL business that will be there. We are picking multi-format specialists, so and our players get compensated very well to play these multiple formats in tournaments. So I think
Yeah.
that it's just the reality of our situation. I mean, look at the fast bowlers. I don't think you could be able to pull a ball out of Shami or Siraj's hand the way they're playing right now. They want to bowl with the white ball. They want to bowl in the IPL, in Test cricket, One Day cricket,
Absolutely.
and they're doing so
Absolutely.
well. They've evolved that well, so they
Yeah.
probably are right there. It just depends on. I mean, look, it's clear how the selectors and the management move. Maybe there
Mm.
still is a position for that Rob Key type of person in India who can at least help with the workload management. I think that's my final submission. I think that the very passionate narrative about how we should have specialists now, I feel I'm throwing out of the window.
Specialist management. Come on. Specialist at the board. We need a specialist at the board.
We
Dhruv,
just need a Rob Key type person to say that, look, we understand that, the selectors and management want multi-format specialists, sorry, multi-format players who can play multiple formats. So all we can do is help and say, how do we manage your workload knowing that you're going to have to play these many games in a year, these many IPL
yeah.
games, and how you manage it. I think that's going to be very interesting going forward. So it's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
It is indeed. It is indeed. This was great. I think we've skimmed the surface of our next episode already, Dhruv. But
Oh yeah, very
I'm very
much.
I'm very excited for what's to come.
Mm.
It's so much fun talking cricket with you that I'm already looking forward to our next episode. We're going to be
Yeah.
talking ahead of the beginning of India's earliest ever domestic cycle. Believe it or not, we're starting off the earliest that it ever has begun.
Yeah,
Uh,
because we need to add more matches.
exactly.
And the good thing
This
is the players get compensated very well to play domestic
Uh,
cricket as well.
yeah, they
And
do.
Dravid
So
wanted one more 50 over competition. That's the other reason.
exactly. So
Yeah.
just to let everyone know and warm everyone up, Duleep Trophy
Yeah.
begins in a couple of days.
28
Couple
June.
28 June, really really early. So we're going to be back perhaps next week before the Duleep Trophy begins with a broader view of India's domestic 2023-2024 season.
Yeah.
What's up for grabs? What are the various dynamics of it? We're going to do a deep dive of everything domestic cricket, starting off with the Duleep Trophy and the progression towards India's test side, which is going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully, Dhruv, you and I will be in person, in and around each
Yeah.
other. We'll be able to record it in the same room. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that.
Oh, look forward to it. It'll be fun.